Hey everybody, welcome back to the PetaPixel podcast. It's your friend Jordan here with Chris Niccolls and Jaron Schneider. But I realized, like some of you, this could be your first podcast. You might not have even watched our YouTube show. Who are these people? I need more information than that. So I'm going to help you all out here. I have decided that we are going to look at the 2000 classic Mick G directed Charlie's Angels film and determine which of us is which lead character. Who is Drew Barrymore? Who is Lucy Liu? And who is Cameron Diaz? Discuss.
Okay, so this is ridiculous.
Preface this with Jordan. All he said was, "I've got a great idea to open this podcast. Let me do it." So Chris
and I give you guys prep time. I want this,
and
to
I'm
just
questioning
be your gut
how
instinct.
great the idea is now.
Can I be Lucy Liu? And I don't know why.
I'm half Asian too, Jared.
Yeah, but I'm actually Chinese.
Oh, hey, good point. I want to be Drew Barrymore anyways because I don't know. You're tall. You've got blue eyes. You can be Cameron Diaz. Now it's just going off of largely physical features. This is
yeah, no, but I want. But this is a podcast. This is an audio medium. So whose personalities mesh with their dynamic?
What
I haven't even watched that movie.
2000. What were you doing, Jared?
I feel like I watched that in 2000, and that was the last time. So
no one has ever rewatched that movie. That's a fact.
Yeah. And I actually remember where I was sitting when I watched that. So in my parents' bedroom, they had like a small TV inside of their armoire, and then their bed, like the footboard was like, maybe 3 or 4 feet from it. And I would sit with my back like that and then be staring straight up in the most ergonomic and close position possible.
As the director intended. To maximize, just make it sensory overpowering.
Can I just be whatever villain is the villain in the movie so that I can try to kill this entire idea?
Was it Tom Green was the villain? I'm trying to remember. Okay, fine. Chris is Tom Green. I don't remember.
Okay, all right. Well,
anyways, this went great. We have a lot to talk about on the show today.
Yeah, today's episode is going to be a little bit different, as I guess Jordan has now led us into. That was different.
Wasn't that great?
Yeah, it was fantastic, man. I was not ready for that. We, in addition to covering a bunch of news stories that we need to talk about, going from the world's largest photography awards, they actually have addressed that issue where the photo that won the overall was staged and done at like a public event. We're also going to talk about Sony has finally acquiesced to your request and will be adding new features to some old cameras. There is an asterisk on that, though.
We did it, guys.
This one is especially good because it's Canadian. A photographer was handcuffed for loitering in Quebec City.
That's so hot.
What broke this morning is... Yesterday, a data recovery expert said that SanDisk Portable SSDs, the drives that everyone has noticed are not doing so hot and they fail regularly. Yeah. Well, this data expert says that was due to hardware. But this morning, SanDisk tells PetaPixel that that's not true. And then, finally, Jordan wants to talk about DigtitalRev's entire video library with Kai Wong is now just gone.
Yeah.
But
so much stuff. But our main story, Jaron.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the A9 III because there has been a lot of feedback from all y'all, and that's what's different about this episode is it's mainly going to be these two gentlemen here responding to everything you had to say about this camera, all your questions. This camera's
like a game-changing powerhouse in beast mode kind of device. So. It's going to be awesome.
They're going to explain
it's radical.
Why.
It's tubular. It's
tubular.
Yeah, it's cowabunga, dude.
We're really good at this. I think I'm probably Drew Barrymore.
Well, let's get started on I guess that.
All right, so how about we return back to some normalcy here and thank our sponsor, OM System, for sponsoring our podcast. We love that they always take care of us here at the PetaPixel podcast. So Get ready to celebrate the holidays. It's coming up. There are huge seasonal savings on OM system cameras, lenses, and more. Holiday promotions are beginning this Thursday, November 16th. So you're going to want to get on this. Visit explore.omsystem.com/petapixel to get the complete list of savings. But let's just take you through it. So first off, one of my personal favorites, the OM1. You can get this body $300 off right now. That's going to bring you to $1899.99 USD. So that's a good opportunity. The OM5, which gives you a lot of the same great computational features, is sexy and compact. That's $200 off down to $999.
They get underneath
40 to 150.
They get underneath that $1,000 mark.
Absolutely.
Just magic number, right? Okay. Sorry for interrupting you.
That's okay. It's lenses too. The 40 to 150 f2.8 I've used quite a bit myself. Fantastic lens, great reach, very compact. $200 off, bringing to $1,299. For $1,299, you can also get the Zuiko 90mm f3.5 macro. That's also a very cool, like long distance portrait lens for like maximum compression. 100 to 400, 4 to 5, 6, $200 off. That's also $1,299. And then Jordan, I think you like this next one, hey?
Oh, do I ever? My turn to interrupt you. The 8 to 25, my favorite focal range, ultra wide to normal. That has a discount on it. How much, Chris?
$899. It's $200 off, bringing you to $899.
Buy 3.
Yes, and then sell 2. I don't know. And then the Zuiko 20mm 1.4, beautiful little just like walk around bright lens, $100 off, $699. So you're getting tons of savings. It's across a fairly wide range of prices to fit most budgets. But yeah, if you haven't jumped on the OM system OM1 bandwagon yet or OM5 bandwagon, this is a great time to do it and just save some money at the same time.
Of note, these aren't the only products that are currently on sale. These are just the ones that we thought were the most notable, that are ones that you should definitely pay attention to. But if you want to see the complete list along with these, make sure to visit explore.omsystem.com/petapixel. Thanks again to OM System for sponsoring this episode. Nice. All right. Let's get into the news, but before we do that, I do need to make a clarification. So last week was the content authenticity episode, and in it, I said that Reuters and AP were not part of the CAI, and that was based on me browsing the website and looking for logos. I was wrong. Both of them actually are members of it, which is fantastic news.
Cool.
That basically covers all of the major outlets in the United States that do hard news, with the exception of just a few. So that's great to see. My apologies on saying that they were not. On that note, wait until the end of the episode where we do never read the comments, where we make sure to always read the comments. I have several other clarifications on the CAI that came as a result of questions that I've cleared with the CAI to make sure that I got the answers correct this time. So wait till the end of the episode and we'll get to those. But before that, let's talk about the CEWE Photo Awards in a story that was spearheaded by PetaPixel's Matt Grokut, the senior news editor. We reported a couple of weeks ago that the winning image was actually staged and not revealed to have been staged. Well, the awards took their time, did some of their own investigation, and decided to suspend the overall winner of that competition, not because the photo was staged. There's nothing against the rules about that. But because the photographer provided, and I quote, untrue and misleading information.
Yeah, they lied.
And it's funny because it's, they wouldn't have gotten in trouble anyways. It wouldn't have had any impact. So, and we talked about this on the podcast. Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with staging photographs. You can argue that 99.9% of photographs are staged. So, yeah, it's interesting to see that this actually has come through and that they've decided to change their mind, because often they'll just kind of like, brush it under, forget about it, hope it goes away. So good reporting. Yeah. Good reportage.
Really, really proud of Matt's work on this one, because like that, I mean, to me, this seemed like quite the bombshell when I first saw it. Like now that I'm looking at the image more carefully now, knowing that it's staged, like the fact that there is a cigarette in every mouth actively puffing smoke during this very iconic moment here does really, read stage to me. But good on the CEWE Photo Awards for doing the right thing and not just burying their head in the sand on this one.
Totally. So
Are
be
you sure you're
honest
not
when you
just, like-
submit to photo contests, everybody.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
eventually it'll
just
turn
be-
out that you were on a hardware exhibition kind of press trippy sort of photo shoot, and you will be shamed. So don't do that.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's not the
especially in
first
a
time this has ever
situation-
happened.
No, and especially in a situation where other photographers were shooting the exact same photo because it was a workshop. I mean, I don't know what you're trying to get away with. It's anyways. Justice has been served. Jaron, you might be underplaying the Indonesian culture's love for the cigarette.
I might be.
I mean,
I really
you
might be. I've never been there, so love to change it. I've never been to Iceland either. As we've
I know. No, don't get us started.
I got to find out who won that. I'm going to ask them because we need to be like, this is
need
a
to
real
talk to
competition
them.
that somebody won. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I digress. Guys, last week, big announcement from Sony, A9 III.
Mm-hmm.
But also of note, they've said that they're finally adding some new features to old cameras. Was that not the biggest complaint that you guys had on Sony in your atomic explosion behind Chris's angry face thumbnail picture?
Absolutely. And I think it's hilarious. Like, there was a big round of applause from the crowd when they said global shutter. I think it was eclipsed when they were like breathing compensation in some
firmware
camera.
updates.
That's the point, though. Some cameras, they're only updating 2 cameras with some features. One's the Alpha 1 and the other's the A7S III.
But those were the 2 that were the most egregious, that were left behind. So it turns out if Jordan and I complain enough about stuff, things happen. I'm
Years
taking
later.
responsibility. Yeah, years later. I mean, but hey, we have a ZF now. But yeah, so the A1 needed a lot of work. I think a lot of people are complaining about it. And we've got breathing compensation now coming to both the A1 and the A7S III. So that's very nice. I believe they're also doing things with LUTs. Hey, Jordan, your wheelhouse there?
Yeah, so as opposed to just having the built-in view assist with Sony's LUT, you can now add them to the camera to get a unique look and preview that. It's not like Panasonic's where it cooks it in. You'll be able to preview it with your chosen LUT, which I find really useful.
Yes.
And then in the future, go Chris.
C2PA format support, which we've just been talking about with the CAI and this content authenticity. And I mean, Sony's always been a partner in that for a long time, but they're now saying that the A1, the A7S III, the new A9 III will be updated. Curious that the other ones aren't, but I'm sure it's coming, or they will do it at some point. And on the topic of the A9 III, which we've been talking about quite a bit.
History taught us nothing.
I know. On the topic of the A9 III, which is coming out soon, they actually have a lot of firmware support that should be coming out around springtime, just to update things. We don't know the full word on that yet, but certainly C2PA support, relay playback, FTP operability, and they've also talked about increasing the shutter speed that's capable under continuous autofocus. So that's going to happen too. So it looks like that's the thing with Sony as a company. If anybody says even anything remotely negative, they're like, first off, kill them and their family, and second, let's fix that immediately. So they're very good that way.
I mean, immediately is I might argue with slightly.
Yeah,
but
this tracks.
It is nice.
Like how long it took them to do the firmware update is about as long, if not a little bit faster than how long it took them to fix the egregious menu that they launched with the Alpha series and kept for years. So, and they did eventually address that. That used to be the biggest complaint I had with Sony cameras was that
it's funny.
Terrible menu.
People still to this day complain about Sony menus as like a thing, having clearly not used the new ones, and they're like Sony's just have the worst menus. Like, in the last few years they fixed it. It's been really, really good. But yeah, I mean that stink stays on you for a while.
My favorite was I would love to pull up what the actual abbreviation was on the A9 III. Remember they had the select the number of frames on your burst mode, and it was just like MSTBR-DBHC on the new camera because they just don't have enough room to fit what the custom function is. So there is still a little bit of that, but I mean it's definitely far better laid out than it used to be.
We shall see. I have to say though, okay, this is getting a little bit ahead, but while we're on topic, one thing that did throw me on the A9 III, in some of the menu functions, I believe it had to do with like speed, shutter boost kind of stuff. Sony's going with like fast, faster, fastest kind of stuff. And I'm a little like, oh, and I talked to one of the execs and they're like, yeah, that might be what we're actually going with. And I'm like, All right.
We'd love to
I
have a
prefer hard
number as
numbers.
opposed to, fast, faster, fastest. But
I prefer a hard number. But hey, that'll be corrected in 8 to 10 years. So, hey, here we go.
let's start complaining now. So in April,
that's
when
why
the
I'm
camera
complaining
comes
right
together.
now.
Yeah, we're on it.
Regardless, spring 2024, you're going to want to pay attention because we're going to see a lot of these updates coming out. And it's good. Hey, better late than never.
Totally.
Have you guys ever been to Quebec?
I have. Love Montreal. Great city.
Jordan has. I'm very jealous.
You've never been, Chris?
I've never been. No, farthest east I've been is Thunder Bay.
Like, never even to the airport en route to somewhere else?
I did land in Pearson Airport once, and I think the Maple Leafs actually won the hockey game at that exact time that we were in the airport waiting. Do you remember that,
That's
Jordan?
right. Yeah, they were.
And
all
it was
losing
very
their
exciting for
minds.
the Torontonians. Yeah.
Well,
And just remember, if you're in Canada, you pronounce it Toronto.
Toronto?
Not Toronto.
Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto.
Toronto.
No vowel
So
before the T and the R.
Toronto.
It's very much like
Toronto. But it's almost
Louisville,
like you drop
not
the T
Louisville.
at the end. You say Toronto. Yeah.
That's I don't like
Toronto.
that.
You don't like that?
I don't like that. I don't like it.
That's culturally insensitive.
You're I'm not addressing that. Okay, so speaking of Quebec, the reason I brought this up is a photographer in Quebec City was waiting for clouds to form so he could capture the perfect shot. He was fined $168 US, $230 Canadian for loitering. What I find funny about this is it does sound like something to me that would happen in Quebec. But in this case, it was actually a U.S. consulate guard that actually asked him to leave and then handcuffed him when he did not. He was trying to get a shot of the city's Chateau Frontenac. Did I say that right? Frontenac?
Pretty good. Yeah, Chateau Frontenac. Yeah.
Hotel. He was accosted, and then he said that you can't be standing outside for more than 30 minutes. The guy said he's not leaving, and he wasn't disturbing anyone. And then the police were responded to as a call of a suspicious man near the American consulate. And when he refused to give his name when the officers arrived, they handcuffed him and then fined him.
It's just
consulate
one of those
is the
weird situations.
problem there, I think.
I mean, there is a bylaw. Obviously, we see these signs everywhere in cities, right? No loitering, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, you never expect them to be enforced, or you expect them to be used largely so that people don't congregate or sleep there or whatever. But really, I don't know. I mean, who knows how much guff he gave back to the U.S. consulate guard? But at the same time, it's a totally justifiable act. Photography, you got to wait long periods. The saddest part too is the saddest, most heartbreaking part is he's waiting for this shot. He's waiting for the clouds, and then right as they're handcuffing him and throwing him in the car, the clouds break, and it's beautiful, and he's forced to watch this. I'm like, yeah, it's just
that's very much
salt in the
photography
wound.
luck.
Oh,
It really feels like a short film.
Yeah, like a scripted
who
scene.
knows? You never know how people respond. I mean, maybe he responds to authority, and I have no idea. I wasn't there. But, generally speaking, we've had our fair run-in with security guards and stuff who will say, sorry, you can't shoot here, or, what are you guys up to, blah, blah, blah. I've never personally had an issue with them, letting me stay there and take photos. But I think a big part of it, or I'd like to think a big part of it, is how you interact. And how you talk, and do you come across with attitude right away? Do you come across in a more agreeable way? I don't know, but we've had lots, and we've always been allowed to shoot.
I mean, knowing Quebec, they may have responded in English to this request, which will immediately make them a little bit irritated with you, has been my personal experience in that beautiful province that I would love to visit once again.
I'm wondering if this guy is Quebecois and he was talked to in English by a U.S. consulate person. Would that have caused?
I'm not sure. We'll have to get more deets.
But
I mean, my short film that I am making.
He's going to raise a case. I mean, he's taking it to court, and I'm sure he'll probably get. I don't know what he's going to get as far as compensation, if anything, but I'm sure he'll get the ticket thrown out. I would imagine that's going to happen. But it's wild. It's a very strange thing.
Canada.
Leave comments below if any of you guys have had run-ins. I'm sure they'll be colorful.
Chris, remember our favorite security guard of all time when we were shooting at Madison Square Garden and he was like, "You can't film here. you can film here, and pointed to a spot 10 feet away. It was very pleasant.
It's funny. I remember also shooting down at night in New York City, and I can't remember where it was. It wasn't Madison Square Garden, but we went down into like a tunnel because the lighting was nice. We wanted to I don't think we were taking photos, just wanted to like videotape a section. And like 5 cops came out, and they were so nice. They were like the nicest guys. And they were so apologetic. And I was like, are we in Canada? What is going on? It was so strange. So yeah, big shout out to NYPD. And they were really, really nice to us there. And they explained like, sorry guys, you can't shoot here. But I mean, no meanness. No,
I think they're used to
nothing.
photographers in New York City. I think that's something they encounter a fair amount.
Well, if we're talking about photographer stories and police, in San Francisco years ago, I was shooting a video with Benjamin Von Wong, and we were in like a forest in the city, which does exist. There's they are there. So we were like hanging out, and like 2 police officers showed up, and they were actually like, "Do you guys need anything? Can we help?" Like it was like they were like super nice. They didn't ask for like, do you have a permit or anything? And they're just like, no, we're just taking cool portraits in the woods. And they're like, sweet. And then they're like, okay, bye.
Nice.
And they're like huge BVW fans.
I mean, half the time they just want to make sure you're up to no good, right? Like they just want to make sure you're just doing whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure someone from an apartment nearby is like, there's a bunch of people in the woods. And so the cops come in and be like, yeah, there's a bunch of people in the woods. Have a nice day. And we
our last trip, actually our last trip to New York City, the border guard, the U.S. border guard is like, he was grilling us. He was grilling us, and he's like, yeah, who do you work for? What outfit? Blah blah. And then I'm like, oh, it's Peta. He's like, yeah, I know who you guys are. I watch your show. Like, why are you giving us a 3rd degree?
Because he took his opportunity and he had a good time. Wait, did this just happen like last week?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
and then he pulled out his phone and he's like, "What do you think of this landscape?"
This photo, he showed us a beautiful waterfall,
Really?
actually in Portland. Yeah, he shot a waterfall in Portland. I am sure it's famous there in the Portland area. It's like a long double waterfall. Yeah,
Multnomah.
Autumn colors. It was beautiful. He did a great job. It was really nice.
So this was like at the airport, like when you're going through. Really?
Yeah,
That's
It was
that's
hilarious.
so funny.
I got a
How
guy
did you not tell me about this?
Oh, I don't know,
haven't
because it
seen you.
happens a lot.
Remember? Like we pre-recorded the episode last week, so this is
I know,
hot news,
but
Jaron.
I mean, we text. I'm just surprised you didn't bring it up. This is great. I actually like it now because it's more surprising for the podcast. I mean, that is a really funny interaction. You guys, that's got to be the best you've been noticed.
I got another border guard here in Calgary who just asks me about Fujifilm products whenever I come through.
Every time you go through, it's like, oh, hey, Jordan. I don't give a crap where you're flying to, but tell me, what's that latest camera like?
It's like XS20 or XT5. I want to know now. So,
and then everybody behind is like, "What is going on?
Okay,
are they going to jail? Or are they going to get cavity searched? I don't know."
Before we move on, this is very similar to because if this keeps happening to you, Jordan, if this happened more than once, there's in my hometown, at my local grocery store. Whenever I visit my parents and I go to the store with them, there's been the same guy who's been a checker there my entire life. Like he has watched me from being a baby all the way to now, and he knows what I do. He reads the website and he watches the channel, and he for the whatever like 2 minutes he's got as he's checking it, he is just roast like question after question, like firing them at me. Yeah, like what do you think of this? This is this cool? Do you like that? All right, cool. See you later. And like 'cause he knows he only has a short amount of time with me, and it's just like very similar to that. Yeah, his are usually Sony based. Not Fujifilm based, but there you go.
Well, he's got a lot to talk to you about next time you check out.
I know.
It's a big Sony week.
He's mainly into video too, so he knows what a global shutter is. So
boy.
Yeah.
Those are nice stories. Let's go to a really bad story that's going to cause lots of sadness and anger.
So you guys remember the big kerfuffle? It was a couple of months ago. Yeah. SanDisk SSDs, basically every major tech outlet and PetaPixel. We all were basically like, yeah, these are not working anymore. Something changed. They're all failing en masse, and we just can't recommend them anymore. Well, a Austrian-based data recovery firm who has been accepting a bunch of these, basically people come in and say like, my drive stopped working, please fix it. They've cracked open so many of these to fix them, and they've essentially seen the same problems arise in every case. They said that all of these problems can't be fixed via firmware like SanDisk says that they've already done. They are based on bad solder, where the solder is bubbling, which can come from bad temperature control in the factory or cheap solder or both. And also, the physical controllers that they're using are too large for the case. So they're banging up against it and knocking themselves
Flexing,
loose. Yeah.
bending,
So that I thought was interesting.
I would do
I'd
it.
like to point out that cheap solder is an excellent name for a band name. Go ahead, Chris.
I like poor solder.
Well, as we always do, I emailed SanDisk, and we haven't heard from SanDisk in like 7 months, but I emailed them anyway, be like, hey, any comment? Yes, comment. They actually got back to me within like the couple of minutes before we started recording this episode, and they have refuted the claim that hardware is the issue. They say that while we're working to gather more information, at this time, we do not believe hardware issues played a role in the product concerns that we successfully addressed with the firmware update. There's a lot to unpack here, because not only are they saying that our hardware issues aren't widespread and don't exist, even though this one place that fixes them says they are, they've also said they successfully fixed this problem with a firmware update, which every publication, including us, and multiple customers disagree with. So it's interesting they've doubled down on it.
In their defense, I think they did. Obviously, they recognized there was a soldering issue.
They did.
And I think they addressed it, like put epoxy on, reinforced it. Maybe they changed their solder paste.
But they didn't change the size of the components.
But what do you think about the band name Solder Me? No?
No.
You'd have to be metal, I think. That would be the best one.
I like it. I love Solder Me. I'm a big fan of Solder Me.
Jordan, anything related to the topic?
Jordan started it.
I mean, I just, at this point, there's just so much evidence piling up, and we're hearing more and more from people because they had that fire sale on hard drives that, things aren't, they're not improving. I mean, we heard that from back in the day. This makes a lot of sense to me that there is some sort of hardware failure going on. And I mean, I'm not repairing hard drives. I'm going to take these people's word for it. That's just my inclination throughout this entire thing, is I just don't think SanDisk has been super open with everybody. And this is just further evidence where, I kind of think the hardware issue makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, nobody wants this kind of press. Obviously, it's really bad for the brand. And I mean, hey, hopefully the changes they've done and firmware updates or who knows what will fix it. That would be the ideal story. But it's going to take a bit, I think, for people to sort of like dive back in there and be like, okay, let's try it now. Because when you're talking about your data and your memories, like that's like we talked about, a few weeks ago, like that's a tough ask. Like, trust us now, we fixed it. I hope so. I legit hope so. And again, let's just remember, all of the manufacturing companies, when it comes to media, storage media, have had issues, right? And it's a thing, right? Devices are devices. They're multiple parts. Things happen. So hopefully, I'm optimistic they fixed it. We'll see.
Jaron, is it worth throwing the link to your hard drive buyer's guide back into this episode as well?
Sure.
So if people are looking for hard drives, check it out. It's very nice. And it's nice to hear the Samsungs I've been using for a while are very reliable. Hooray.
Yep. Up there and one of the ones we recommend. So, yeah.
All right. Jordan, your next story. Kai Wong is old. He's old like we're old, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is, I remember when we started our show, DigtitalRev was going, and in a lot of cases, they inspired us, right?
Yeah, you totally. Sure you want to lead with that? That the story is about Kai being old?
Yeah, totally. He would love it.
Takeaway. Okay.
I mean, look, we have correspondence with Kai for years, for over a decade. Yeah, he calls us bad British words, which I think is a term of endearment in British culture. So, yeah, there you go.
But yeah, the big thing here is some younger listeners or people who just haven't been watching photography YouTube for a while might not know what a huge deal DigtitalRev was back in the day. It was the first photography YouTube channel to clear 1 million views. A lot of those episodes are still kind of legendary, like melting a Canon 7D. Their cheap camera pro photography challenge was a huge deal back in the day. And yeah, it's funny, we were kind of running in parallel. It wasn't until we'd been working at making the Camera Store TV for a few years that I started watching them, but they totally inspired us to go do goofier things. Like, I think after we started watching them, we did our brutal SD card where we drove over cars with a truck and water tested them in the bathtub together and things like that. So they yeah, hugely influential. And a lot of those are still episodes I remember really fondly. And they have not been with DigtitalRev for a long time. Like Kai left very publicly, I think like 5 years ago. It was around the time we moved to DP Review. But those episodes stuck around. I mean, their banner was still the world's most watched photography YouTube channel. And then recently, I'm not sure exactly at what point they did it. I don't think they would ever delete them, but they unlisted all of the episodes.
Right.
So there was a lot of talk going around because I guess a while back they had tried to sell them as NFTs, like own your favorite
entire episodes.
Yeah, entire episodes. You can do video, same as still images.
No, I understand that, but I'm just baffled by the stupidity.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just like, how are we going to turn a profit after this? You know, no one's really watching the channel. I don't think they've put out a new episode in years. Some way to monetize it. But apparently that was a while ago. There's no current information about it. But yeah, if you want to watch any of those old episodes, they are gone. I know a lot of people are, you know, now posting places like, oh, I've got a bunch of them, and they're posting links to that. But they don't own that, you know. DigtitalRev still owns that content.
And
to
be clear, DigtitalRev is a store, right? It's a gray market store.
Yeah, that's why it was such a big deal, because we were at the camera store, DigtitalRev was a store, and so we're like, oh, this is totally possible. Like, you know, it was interesting too. They had their upper management, their bloody producer, and everything like that, and yeah, it was a neat kind of format to see. Oh, we could do something quite similar. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, there's no denying he was a superstar. It made him a superstar.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's clearly, like, just talking to some of the people after they left there, like we've met Warren, we know Kai and Locke, and there's clearly quite a bit of bad blood about how everything went down there. Not that anyone's, you know, super public about it. So yeah, it's, I mean, honestly, I don't care what the behind the scenes is on this. It's just a shame to see like a huge chunk of photography history and, like, you know, a very entertaining show that got a lot of people into photography in the first place. You know, no one was talking about, you know, the Bokerific thing. I think got a lot of people. Bokalicious, yeah. The Bokerific was our version when we parodied Kai in an episode you should totally watch, the Fujifilm X10 review. But yeah, that got a lot of people looking at vintage glass and things like that are now very popular. I think the show got a lot of that started. So yeah, it's just a huge shame to hear. And yeah, hopefully they'll realize, you know, I doubt, again, that they're deleted. Just relist these videos. They're a part of photography history. It sucks. And it's very personal to me, because this was our fear when we heard DP Review was getting shut down. They couldn't tell us. We were like, are all of our episodes going to go? All of my work, you know, my portfolio for the last 5 years, is that all going to disappear? They couldn't tell us at the time. And that was like really scary for me. So yeah, it sucks to see this same thing happen to other people who made good stuff that we respect. So,
but my big dumb face is still all over the internet.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Channels. So
yes, thank God.
Whew. All right.
Yeah, let's get into our main topic today, which is kind of going back and ruminating a little bit on what you guys did in New York, the experience that you had, the very short experience that you had with the Sony A9 III.
One day. Nuts. You think of like old timey press trips, like to do one day for the launch and then your field test with it is crazy.
Yeah, it was, as usual, a very hectic experience.
You did real well,
a fantastic
considering.
One. Yeah, it was great. We got to see like everybody. I mean, even people we haven't seen in many, many years. It was great to have everybody back. So that was really good. And then not talk to them because, you know, you've got one day to shoot. But it was beautiful.
So the overarching concept of this is, do you guys think that this is the start of global shutters becoming a thing, or will they still, in your mind, stay kind of relegated to specialty?
I personally think that like any industry, there's going to be different uses for different sensors. I think like global shutter, this is great that it's now come. CMOS global shutters of this size. We're absolutely going to see new cameras that feature it. But stacked, I guess you could say now typical, you know, shutters, our sensors, are still going to be very useful. They're affordable. They're very fast. Like we're getting fast readout speeds that in a lot of cases mitigate these issues. And not a lot of cameras need to go 80,000th of a second and still fire flash. But it's still a game-changing beast mode powerhouse because it does unlock some capabilities that will work for certain photographers and be very useful. And I think one of the misconceptions that we're first seeing off the board across the internet is everybody's like, the whole industry is kind of making this out to be the be all end all. And so then rightfully so, a lot of people are like, do I really need these extra benefits? How is this going to impact my life? And no, not everybody needs what a global shutter can do, but it doesn't make it any less exciting.
Yeah. I mean, my big takeaway is with stacked sensors, that really fast readout, enabled a lot of really cool stuff with like autofocus saw dramatic improvements once we started seeing those cameras. People forget real-time tracking was introduced in like the A61, but also the A9, where it actually performed really well, the original A9. And that started our whole thing towards like really good tracking as our standard autofocus modes. And with a global shutter, now we're reading out instantly. There's the only real limitation is on the processing power. We're going to continue to see massive improvements there. The most exciting thing for me is when we were looking at a stacked sensor, we were like, finally, we've gotten to where we were with a mechanical focal plane shutter, right? Like we started seeing with the Z8, we were like, we're there. We can sync at a 2/50th of a second.
No need for mechanical shutter anymore. Yeah,
exactly. Which is why I think what Nikon did made so much sense. What's really cool here is we're now going past speeds we've even seen with leaf shutter cameras. Like this is going to open up new avenues of photography. And I was talking with Chris. I'm like, honestly, people are going to come up with ways to use this that I haven't thought of yet. This is the same. I really liken it to when we saw probe lenses and we were like, I have no idea how the hell to use these things. And then other people figured it out and made really cool advertising shots with it. It's going to take some people messing around with like insanely fast strobe sig stuff to come up with types of pictures that we hadn't initially foreseen because the technology wasn't there. But also we're just not limited by readout speed anymore. I look at the readout speed of a sensor and I say like, oh, okay, it can do 8K at 24 frames per second, but not 30 frames per second. Its maximum speed is going to be this. That's the limiting factor on most cameras. That's not the case anymore. So it's going to be really cool, especially what Sony can do with firmware with this camera when that sensor is not the bottleneck anymore. So, and yeah, I think for the time being, it's going to be a weird transitionary state. Like when stacked sensors came out, we just saw them in like 1-inch cameras for the longest time. Remember the early RXs and they were like, stacked sensors are going to change everything. And we're like, cool, when? Where this is really cool because it's happening at the professional level, like we've seen these in video cameras, but not in a photographic camera without a mechanical shutter before. So that is really exciting to me. And I do think, in a few years, the majority of high-end cameras are going to be global shutter-based cameras because it opens up new creative possibilities. I monologued for a long time. Someone else talk.
No. I think it's important that you talk because I feel like that you don't talk enough on this podcast, Jordan.
What? He talks all the time and he goes on and on and on.
No, that's you, Chris.
That's a weird
and me. I actually have a question because this was brought up by several people. And it comes basically down to you guys and everyone else was making a big deal out about a global shutter full frame sensor. And they're like, we had those 20 or 15 years ago with CCDs, a CCD global shutter sensor. So I want you guys to address this question. What is the difference between a CCD global shutter and a CMOS global shutter? And why is this a big deal now? And why did it take so long to get this now if we had it so long ago?
I mean, CCD charge coupled devices have some major downsides. I would say downsides. I mean, good detail, absolutely, but the dynamic range was an issue. Noise performance was an issue. I mean, CMOS chips really kind of were affordable, which was important, especially when the industry is growing and we want to get people into these cameras, but also delivered excellent dynamic range in comparison, low noise in relatively speaking. So yeah, and with mechanical shutters still being in widespread use, it avoided a lot of the rolling shutter issues that global shutters now eliminate. It wasn't really a big deal, right? So yeah, I think CCD still have their place, but when it comes to cameras now, CMOS is here to stay. That's going to be the industry standard forever, I think, for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really, like you say, CCD technology is still relevant. I mean, the problem is it's just crazy power consumption on those.
Yeah.
So that's why we started seeing cameras moving over to things like live view in them. And then they needed to be a lot more efficient, capturing video with these kind of sensors. And yes, CCDs were able to deliver beautiful image quality, but once CMOS sensors got fairly close. We saw every major manufacturer abandon
Switch over.
CCD technology because they wanted something that was much lower power consumption. I mean, think about running a mirrorless camera with a CCD. That would be like, what were the Sigma? It'd be like a Merrill, get 24 pops on a battery and you're done. Where with this,
and it would get hot. It would get hot, baby.
Yeah, totally. We're seeing comparable battery life on this to the stacked A1 sensor on this new camera. I mean, yes, there are right now image quality penalties, and we need to keep saying, like, we've had global shutter video cameras for a while, and the drawbacks have been very well known. We just haven't had them at this size, They've been Super 35 or smaller, but the penalty has been, worse low light performance and worse DR. And Chris and I were actually really excited. The low light performance on the A9 III looks good. Like, it doesn't look like a huge drawback. We want to play with raw files, find out how much processing is there. And we can't really test DR, until we can process those raw files. But looking at the video, and it does definitely look like we're going to take a hit in
It looks like Chris wanted to say but when he raised his
finger.
100%.
Yeah, like Jordan says, we can't test it fully, but I'm 100% confident that we're going to have issues here with dynamic range and low light performance. I mean, the low light performance does look very good, but I mean, even compared to an A7R5, I think the A7R5 has better low light performance at high ISO. It's not that, especially when you consider the extra megapixels you have. So clearly the global shutter is a compromise, and I think that makes a lot of sense for the A9 III because it is a sports journalism style camera, and those compromises totally make sense. But I don't think people need to feel like, oh, this is it now. Global shutter is going to be all the shutters from now on. No way. I really don't think so. I think it's going to be a long time before other manufacturers start releasing them or buying them or whatever. As maybe for a specialized camera, but not as like a global usage global shutter. We're not there yet. That's a long way away. We're going to have stacked chips and standard CMOS sensors here for a long time to come, I think. Well, it all depends on what you want your camera to do.
Yeah, I think part of the reason we saw video cameras with global CMOS sensors first is because the benefits are more noticeable there, shooting super high frame rates. And if you're shooting a film where there's a press pit and everybody's firing off strobes, like rolling shutter looks terrible in those situations. So, a global shutter does have real aesthetic benefits for video production. And now they're showing us like, hey, and it gives you cool creative options for stills and the ability to like shoot 120 frame per second full resolution raw files with no rolling shutter. Like that is incredibly useful for some kinds of photography.
I think the other big thing here too is now that we do have global shutters in a full frame mirrorless camera like this, those fast speeds, we're always trying to get faster readout speeds. Now we have a camera where the readout speed's not even an issue. And that does also then have benefits when we start thinking about computational photography going forward into the future. And we've talked about how that's kind of maybe like the next big frontier is where cameras can start to do computational photographic techniques, and you need fast readout speed to do that. And I mean, the A9 III has started doing some of that. I mean, this is, they're starting to practice doing noise reduction multi-shot modes handheld. It'll take 32 shots without you really even realizing it, right? Because it happens so quickly. It'll take these 32 shots. It'll automatically throw out the bad ones, and then it'll combine them together to try to reduce the noise levels. And so this is all interesting stuff, and it's going to become more and more commonplace. And I think that's a very important thing. So we're always excited to see shutters that either read out faster or in this case, eliminate readout speed altogether because it unlocks a lot of potential for that. So yes, this is a test bed going forward for other platforms, what we can start to do and change photographically. So it's exciting. People are focusing too much on the A9 III and not focusing enough on just the future potential. That's what is really getting all of us super animated and excited. My hands are going everywhere for the people that aren't watching. And so, that's what we're really excited about.
Well, on that note, actually, that brings up a point that we got an email from Anthony Cronhelm emailed us and asked, said this / asked some questions. It is great news that Sony has introduced a global shutter sensor to the market, but are they going to allow their competition like Nikon or OM System to have access to this new technology that is such a game changer? An OM with a global shutter sounds great. I think it would be a long time before Nikon gets access to the sensor technology from Sony, unfortunately. Like many camera manufacturers do, the only two that make their own sensors are Canon and Sony, which puts both these cameras manufacturers in good position going forward in the future. He compares this similar to Apple's M3 chips, where it's their own thing. They're the only ones making it.
Right.
They're the only ones who get it. It seems like a monopoly right now with sensor technology, which is unfortunate for consumers. I do want to point out that those are the two major sensor makers, but there are two others. Samsung also has a sensor fab, and Atomos, I don't know who they're using. They also have a global shutter full frame 8K sensor that they've designed and actually have produced at least a prototype of. But the point still stands. There aren't a lot of makers in this. And so what do you guys think will happen here?
First off, I think Anthony has one of the most badass last names. Kronhelm. What is that? Crown helmet? I don't know. That sounds cool. And second, I mean, Sony's going to make a poop ton of money. That's what I think.
Yeah,
they're selling it, right? They're going to sell it.
Yeah, their camera division and their sensor fabrication are separate divisions. The sensor fabrication is going to want to sell as many sensors as possible. Correct. And look at what happened with stacked. We saw the A9 original with the stacked sensor. It took like 3 to 4 years, I believe, before we started then seeing stacked sensors from the other manufacturers.
Which is about the time it takes to develop a camera around a sensor that you now know is available to purchase.
Yeah,
sure.
So, yes. They are separate businesses. Sony Semiconductor does talk to Sony's camera division. So Sony's camera division knew this was coming and was in development and were able to build around it faster than everyone else. But yeah, I agree with you. Sony Semi is going to want to sell the crap out of this. So Canon also has their own fab. We don't know what's going on over there. I've long maintained that the R1 sensor has been complete for a while. It's been other stuff around that. And I think that kind of points to the only issues that I really noticed with the A9 III, which are processing. Mm-hmm. Sony's processors are very, very good. They've always been strong in processing.
And that's key too.
Yeah, and if they have limitations on what they can do with this thing, imagine someone who's not as strong in processing attempting to deal with this kind of data throughput.
Yeah. Canon has at least stepped up their game quite a bit, in recent years. And there was a lot. There's no basis for this, but there was a lot of talk at the show of just like, this camera's coming out in March. Why are you guys announcing it now so early, right? And so, and then there's everybody starts thinking like, oh, is it because the holiday season? Probably. Is it because you want to just get this out on the global stage so that everybody knows, like, you're the first and stuff?
We did it first.
Oh, do other manufacturers have a stacked global sensor coming out in a month or something? Are they just trying to beat announcements? Who knows? But there was a lot of conjecture. It was a conjectureful event.
I want to jump on something really quick that you pointed out, Jaron, which is the processing bottleneck. Chris, you talked about how they can do like some really cool multi-shot, like what your cell phone does. The problem is it doesn't have the processing in camera. You have to bring it into Sony's train wreck imaging edge software that will crash if you look at it the wrong way. I mean, hopefully they'll improve that now that it's going to be dealing with hundreds and hundreds of files, to create a single, series of images. But yeah, I do absolutely think that is the processing bottleneck right now.
Yeah, totally.
Even also, if they... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. There was just another quick question I think that was thrown in there. Is it possible to stack a global sensor? It's key to point out this is actually a stacked global sensor in the A9 III. Yeah. It doesn't have the extra circuitry to do dual gain processing, but it's a stacked global sensor.
Do you think...
Could you BSI a global sensor?
Can you BSI a global sensor? And do you think it is possible to do dual gain global with enough finagling?
Oh, eventually.
Yeah, we just keep seeing as the circuitry improves, we get access to more stuff like this. My theory, and we'll test this when we get a production version, is I think it's only utilizing the higher gain step, which is why we're starting at 250 ISO.
Right. Yeah.
As opposed to having that lower one to maximize DR. They know who's going to be using this camera. Who knows? Maybe we'll see like a global shutter camera with excellent DR, not great high ISO performance during this transition. And it'll be back to like the early pro DSLR days where you had your sports model and your high res model. We might be going back to that. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
We kind of surmise that the A9 III's higher ISO performance will be relatively better looking than its lower ISO performance. You know what I mean? Like, which we saw in the Nikon D4 was kind of a very similar kind of setup where they tweaked the sensor to be better at higher ISOs, which for sports and journalism makes sense, right? I mean, you're shooting at higher ISOs, you want those fast shutter speeds, makes sense. So we're thinking that's what we're going to see when we start looking at raw files.
So speaking of ISO, we had 2 questions related to this. John Drummond Photo says that the high ISO performance actually looked pretty good, agreeing with you guys based on your video. That's not surprising, though, given this camera is aimed at sports shooters, including indoor sports. And related to that, Techno Latino says that, will the A9 III be good enough for concert photography, low light with crazy lighting that kind of dips in and out, or should they go with an A7R5? So there's some questions here that they want to, pick your brain on. What do you think?
John Drummond, we've seen comments from John Drummond before, so thank you for always supporting us. I mean, he's basically just agreeing. I'm curious, Techno Latino 5552, does that mean there's 5,551 other Techno Latinos out there that have taken that name and he was just the last on the list? I always wonder that when I see those numbers. I think the A9 III will be good enough.
Number.
Maybe it's his pin number. I think the A9 III makes sense for concert photography. A low light performance is decent, but again, crazy lights, lots of strobes going off, flash going off, and that would wreak havoc on a traditional sensor. So again, I do think the A7R5 does have better ISO performance across the board. I can't confirm that, but I'm pretty sure. And of course, 60 megapixels if you need it. That's a big advantage if you need it. But I think the A9 III makes a lot of sense for crazy lighting.
Luckily, we have months to make this decision because this camera's not coming for a while. So even if you wanted to buy the A9 III, you don't get to until at least, February, March? Something like that.
What's compelling too is it sounds like they're going to try and get them to us fairly early in this window between the announcement and it being released. So hopefully we'll really be able to test this before that official announcement and just give you a lot more peace of mind when you're making that decision as to exactly what the compromises are. I hate when they give you a pre-production. They're like, and we can test the production once it's already shipping to customers. A lot of camera sales are in pre-sales right now. So that would be nice.
Now, Andres Gonzalez Cerda, 7635. So again, way down the list of how many Andres Gonzalez Cerdas are in the world. He said, it would be nice to see examples of problems solved by this camera besides the rolling shutter. I feel like we did show that. I mean, rolling shutter is one part of it, but also having the ability to maybe do future computational photographic technologies that get you more advanced. Also be able to shoot flash at 80,000th of a second, which we did an example of. I mean, that stuff's quite impressive.
Did you guys have, on that note, before we move on to the next question, when you guys shot that portrait outside, where people still don't quite understand what you mean when you say you can turn day into night, not night into day. Yeah. No, you literally mean turn day into night. Anyone who's like, no, you got that wrong. No. No,
I got it right.
He actually means turn day into night.
Yes.
That strobe, what was that strobe?
That was just the Sony. I can't remember which one. It was like a 42
That's what I thought. Leveled. It was a Sony Speedlight, wasn't it?
Just TTL Speedlight. Yep.
I have a strong belief, and I'm going to follow up on this. I think that maximum shutter sync with flash is limited to Sony strobes.
Well, I don't know.
I bet I will. I'm going to look up in this. I bet you have a limitation there because that would be classic Sony. And the actual shutter sync is closer to 1/16,000th, which, by the way, is still absolutely bananas. But
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I think that to reach the peak, you got to use a crappy Sony Speedlight.
I don't know. So when we were talking, because that was one of the first questions, Jordan, do you remember them saying that there was no limitation even with third-party flashes? And we were also firing pro photo strobes at this event as well.
Were you firing them at the full 180,000?
Not 80,000.
That's what I thought.
So here's what I got out of them is there's actually a menu option where you can dial in latency, because they said in this case, it's not so much a matter of it's not a matter of the shutter curtain. It's how much latency there is in the transmission system if you're using a wireless flash setup. So you can actually in the camera dial that in, which is going to be annoying. If you want to use really fast sync speeds, you will have to do a little trial and error. Once you know, hey, this flash at this output, there's a 0.0018 second, delay on that, and synchronize those two. Or, just shoot 120 frames per second and, pull out the frame where the two actually sunk up is an option as well. But yeah, I do expect it will be a little bit more frustrating using, professional ones. I do wonder if you have a TTL system, like we have the Westcott Universal transmitter, if that information will automatically be carried over. So we'll have to test that once we
require
get
a firmware update to that little trigger. So I think one of the reasons why it is at this point limited to that speed light is what you just discussed. It's the only one that's properly communicating with the camera and letting it know when to actually
tweak
fire
anything.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure in the keynote presentation, that was one of the slides where they're like, we'll sync up to 80,000th of a second. And it was like with all flashes, with third-party flash. And I didn't see an asterisk or anything.
I will maintain my skepticism until I prove it.
That's fair. But
it has a sync port, like one of the old crummy falls out if you look at it wrong. So
yeah,
you have to run a cable out to get those.
Go down to TCS and pick one up.
Very annoying. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, look, even if you consider the fact that the base ISO is 250, where most cameras would have 100, being able to shoot 16,000th of a second with flash sync
is still impressive. I already said that. But I'm just saying that they always put just like the autofocusing and how you're able to fire. You can only do it with Sony lenses, that sort of thing. Like get full autofocus performance at maximum frame rate. Little things.
Yeah, and that goes right into our next question from OneStow by email, who's asking, the Sony A9 III has a max shutter speed of 80,000, and everybody is impressed and losing their mind, whereas the Fuji X-H2 has an even faster shutter speed, 180,000. Nobody mentioned it. How can the Fuji achieve a faster shutter speed than Sony, beat in global shuttering speed? I mean, the key thing about having the 80,000 of a second, it's not that's that significant as far as the speed goes. For me, it's more that you can sync flashes up to that. That's what's really impressive. That's something you cannot do on standard sensors.
I mean, the big thing here is understanding how a modern CMOS sensor reads. It is going to read out each line at I forget what number they gave me, an insanely fast frame rate, but it still has to read top to bottom, which means you're still going to have rolling shutter issues with it. And when would I want to use insanely fast shutter speeds? To freeze incredibly fast moving things. So I don't want rolling shutter on that. That's why I don't find those super fast even like some of the medium format cameras that scan incredibly slow will give you faster than standard shutter speeds in electronic shutter mode, but it looks like trash because you've got this huge rolling shutter issue throughout it.
Absolutely.
This rectifies that. It makes that more usable. That's why.
Earth Piece 3323, the 3,323rd Earth Piece, according to Chris.
I don't know why I'm so fascinated with where's the numbering structure? Maybe Jordan's right. Maybe people are just putting their pin numbers out there because they want to live dangerously. I want to know.
Earth Piece says the A9 III looks impressive. The size of the buffer and the speed of clearing it is definitely a big limitation. I wrote a story about this where everybody discovered Jeremy. I asked Jeremy to go ask Sony, and he got the answer. And Sony seemed very confused that we would even ask this. Their camera doesn't seem to use the new CF Express spec, which makes it like twice as fast if they just upgraded the camera to fit that. Now, that said, there are no CF Express 4.0 type A cards, but that's only because Sony, who makes these, decided not to make one. So it's really kind of just like, I don't know which is first here, the chicken or the egg. But the fact that it doesn't allow you to clear as fast as I would hope, I've been thinking about it some more. And I will put this in my bold predictions, which we'll discuss on the podcast when that comes out. But every year I do a bold predictions for the next year, and I also rate myself on the previous year. I think that Sony did put the physical parts in here to enable 4.0. And once they decide to actually make a card, they'll do a firmware update, which will allow this camera to handle it. But for now, it doesn't. But I also think, now this is the bold part. That's not bold. That part.
Barely at all. No. If this was barbecue sauce, that was vinegar. Go ahead, Jaron.
The bold will be that when they do this, it will increase the ability for the sensor to get to 240 frames per second from 120. That's my actual bold prediction.
Wow. Yeah, do we even need more than 120?
Do we need 120? We don't need 120.
Yeah.
A lot of this is Sony being like toot and horn. We can do it. No one else can. I don't know why.
And
this
look
is
how
this is
much
too
good press Nikon got with the Z8 and Z9. Mostly the Z9 because it's been out longer, doing these massive firmware updates. And Sony has, by us even, gotten trashed a fair amount for like having a flagship body that doesn't see meaningful firmware updates. They might really be trying to turn things around with that. So I think that I might sign off on that bold prediction. So if you can just put a dash Jordan agrees on that article when you write it, then
okay, hold on. All right, so I think we're done talking about the A9 III for now. I want to move. Would you want to do one more thing? You want to do one more thing?
Yeah. So just on that topic, I mean, I want to say I do agree with Earthpiece 3323, just in that the buffer size is fine on this camera, but it isn't like cosmic, and the speed of clearing is decent if you're using the Type A CF Express cards. With SD, it really depends, but I do want to give a shout out to Sony at least. 120 frames per second. Very few situations we're actually going to use that. I would personally, with this camera, never leave it on 120 frames per second. But I do really like that new feature with the speed boost, ultra, nitro, whatever mode, where you can have the camera firing at a far more reasonable 8 or 15 frames per second, where you typically use it. And then have that boost go to 30 or 60 or 120 if you feel you need it. In those situations where you can just push the button while you're shooting and it'll give you that extra burst. I think that's very smart. And that definitely helps to deal with the fact that, you don't want the buffer filling up instantaneously every time you're shooting.
Well, it's worth noting that it doesn't actually fill the buffer when you're shooting at 120. The camera just craps out on processing. It cannot process more than a minute or a second and a half.
You get like a second and a half, roughly.
Yeah, even though that doesn't come close to actually filling the 700 plus image buffer. It cannot handle that much data. The processor will overheat probably.
But you'll get way more out of your buffer doing, a slower frame rate for regular shooting, and then just tap that button every time you need that little burst, right at the peak of the moment. And I love that it does that seamlessly. That is pretty cool.
All right.
I don't think we've seen that before, honestly.
I don't think we have either. So we're going to try and get through as many tech support and comments as we can in the next 15 or so minutes because it is. But firstly, before that, I wanted Jordan. Can you take another sip of your drink? This mug fascinates me.
What have you been up to? He's been making that mug.
What is this?
This is my son Liam. When he was, I
Handsome
believe,
boy.
3
Beautiful boy.
or 4. A while back. My sister-in-law got this mug made of a picture of him making derpy face, and if you drink,
it's great.
You get to have that. This is wonderful gift that I cherish, and I didn't realize I grabbed the derpy mug until we were already down here. It just looked like a normal white coffee mug on the other side.
I was very surprised.
Once I did, though, I was absolutely drinking out of the derpy side every single chance I got.
So besides drinking out of the cup, what have you been up to?
Okay, so very quickly, I took another Chris recommendation and watched Like Father,
Which
Like
I've been
Son.
telling you for years.
He claims this. I think this is a new recommendation. Fantastic movie. It's a Japanese film about two fathers find out that their kids were switched, and it takes place in modern times. So it's like, how did this happen exactly? But then what do you do about that? How do you deal with the fallout from it? It's wonderful. It's incredibly well acted. It doesn't get like maudlin or like super over dramatic at any point. It's all very grounded. And a big thing that having had kids, you never see like a good kid performance. It's all these Hollywood kids where their parents are like, smile big and you'll be a star. You'll be Tom Cruise. And these kids are so natural on screen, which just makes it so much better. And it's an incredibly powerful movie. It's on Criterion Channel if you want to check it out. I adored it. It was an excellent recommendation from Chris. And now Ev and I are going to be plowing through this director's entire filmography, we've decided.
Yeah, Koreeda.
So we just started Shoplifters, which we didn't quite get through, but it is also just a monumental, fabulous movie. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes and deserved it. Although I think Like Father, Like Son should have also won the Palme d'Or. This guy should get all the palms. Should be his.
And even more importantly, I think you should always listen to Chris Niccolls' recommendations because they're freaking gold.
Okay. What's on your desk there, Chris?
This is my Atomic ski boot, my Hawks 110. Ski season's coming up again, and I'm very sad. And I'm wondering if there's any recommendations out there because I know a lot of you guys ski. So I can't ski because my feet hurt really bad. Jordan even saw it last time, and it's always been that way since like I was a kid, and it gets worse and worse. And the last time I think I went down the hill once, and I was like, I can't walk. The pain is incredible.
It's the boots?
I got these because they're like super flat boots. My wife is an avid skier. She's very sad that I can't ski with her anymore. So I don't know what to do. I even
what
got
part
these,
of your foot hurts?
The bottom of my foot.
Have you put tried to put a Dr. Scholl's in there?
Nah, so I went. So this is the last try. I'm like, I'm gonna do this because I got to keep skiing, and it hurts so bad. I actually went, and I got the custom vacuum formed thermal arch support, where the dude like wraps my foot in a plastic bag, and he's like rubbing my toes, and he's like massaging me, and it was great. I mean, that was worth the cost of admission alone. But he then like does this vacuum thing, and it makes a perfect mold for your foot. Didn't make a difference. Most painful experience ever. And I got this boot specifically because it's wider foot, better for flat feet, which I have. I don't know. Do I start boarding? Like, I don't know what to do now.
It's not, the boots are the same. I feel like, how do you wear shoes?
No, I can walk fine, but
I've seen it.
Ice skates too, same thing. If I wear ice skates, it's the exact same issue. Just
maybe it's because you're putting like, I don't know. It's ice skates. I feel like it's because there's like a point you're on, so your feet are absorbing.
Maybe I'm not made for winter anymore. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just like, you know what? Summer, Chris from now on. I'm moving to the equator.
If you've got any suggestions for Chris's feet.
All you like owning podiatrist.
yeah, absolutely. Like, how many podiatrists are on our show? Honestly, I'm just gonna, hit some opiates before I go skiing, I guess. Like, I don't know.
Numb your feet or something. All right. So quickly before we get to the comments, what I've been working on, I've not only have I gone back to playing Risk of Rain, which is an excellent roguelike if you guys like roguelikes, video games, because they released an expansion on the PC version like freaking a year and a half ago, and it finally came to PlayStation last week. I played the heck out of that with my friends this weekend, so that's what we did. But I've also actually started building my Gunpla, and if you know what Gunpla are, you're awesome. If you don't know what Gunpla is, that is
Jordan does not know what Gunpla is.
Gunpla is the art of building robotic giant fighting robots, but in scale.
Anime plastic mechs.
Yeah, plastic mechs. And you can kind of see one in here. Like there's
your
one
Robotechs, your Gundams.
One.
Yeah.
It's only Gundam. I only care about Gundam. So I've built one, and I am a third of the way through another. I have another one down here and another one down here, and I've decided that I'm going to keep making these because they're fun. That's it. Let's move on. So we are definitely, I was too ambitious. There's no way we're going to cover all of this today. So I received a great number of speak pipes from y'all. I apologize. It's going to take a while to get through you again. We when we were in Idaho, we managed to plow through all of them, and the backlog is again filled. So
thank you for using SpeakPipe. I mean, we asked for it. And
we do. And on that note, let's listen to a SpeakPipe from James.
Hey guys, my name is James. Thank you so much for your podcast. I look forward to every episode that drops. Quick question about monochrome photography. I'm very captivated by monochrome sensors, primarily because I do astrophotography, and with narrowband imaging and monochrome sensors, you can do a lot of neat things. I'm thinking about getting the Pentax K3 monochrome, primarily because I can't afford a Leica. And my primary focus would be astrophotography, but secondarily, I also like to do street photography, landscape photography, event work, and I thought it might be a nice secondary camera for those things. But a question, is there a perceptible difference between a monochrome sensor shooting black and white and a color sensor converted to black and white? I know that there's a lot of varying opinions on this, but I would love to get your take on that. Again, it's not going to affect my decision to buy this camera because my primary purpose is astrophotography, but just for anybody interested in looking into this for street, I'd be curious to see what you'd think. Thanks.
Shall I tackle this one here? Thanks for your question, James. So I love black and white photography. First off, astrophotography, black and white. I did some of that in Idaho, and actually, I think it's quite beautiful. I think it's underrated. Everybody always wants color, but black and white can be really, really nice for that. I think the whole world should be black and white anyway, so I'm biased. But, there is a benefit to using a monochromatic sensor. typically at best you're looking at maybe like 2/3 of a stop to a stop, better dynamic range across the board. But that's kind of tricky because you're also then looking at a photo in black and white, which completely changes the way that noise is rendered and how it looks more like grain anyways. So I would say, in my opinion, the best option is still to use a color sensor, as terrible as it sounds, because you have the extra flexibility to really change contrast, play with specific tonal ranges, even in black and white. Obviously, the benefit of also be able to shoot color. But there is a slight benefit to image quality in some ways when you go to monochromatic sensor, and good for you for not changing your decision there, because yes, it's beautiful. Also, I cannot afford a Leica either. I wish I could.
I want to jump on really quick. So looking at our calendar, it's still on there. We are trying to do the K3 monochrome. It's just a lot of cameras. You might have noticed got announced. There's a lot going on. It's the pre-Christmas. We will get to it. When we reviewed the Leica, like Chris said, we found, just under a stop of improvement with the black and white sensor, which, to put it in context, that's like going APS-C to full frame. So if you're always shooting black and white, this is a huge bump in the performance of your camera. Is it going to be that much with the K3 monochrome? K3 monochrome. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
no, we will test that, which is why we're doing the review, which is why I want to do it. And it's going to happen. Damn it.
Does it outweigh the versatility of a color sensor? Probably not, but it's still infinitely cool. So don't go for it.
I had a bunch more in here, and I'm just looking at the time, and I don't have the time. Unfortunately, I'm going to just move these to next week. A couple of them, I hope that you weren't hoping for an answer immediately. I apologize. We will do our best to answer these. I've got several in here. I'm just going to move them to next week on our Thanksgiving episode because there's too many. And I really need to actually
American Thanksgiving episode.
Yeah, Thanksgiving already happened, Jaron. It's over. You missed it.
I'm sorry.
We were in Idaho.
America. I'm going to move on to never read the comments, the section where we make sure to always read the comments. And in this one, I do want to answer a very specific, extremely long question that I got related to the CAI, the Content Authenticity Initiative. And I sent these questions in their entirety to the Content Authenticity Initiative to answer, and they did. Again, Andy Parsons, Senior Director of the Content Authenticity Initiative at Adobe, answered these questions. So this guy asked several. He broke it into 3 answers. One of the questions he asked was, they basically said that the issue they have with it is it doesn't matter if the signatures are removed. It only matters that new signatures cannot be forged. And because the algorithms use cryptographic signatures, it's very difficult for someone to falsely claim that their image was created on a camera that embeds content credentials. That's the concept. This sounds similar to the way that certificates are used elsewhere throughout information technology. My question is how the cryptographic key used to make the signatures is protected. Andy says, as with any public or private key system, the security of the private key is essential. The same techniques to protect it for banking, personal biometrics, and other applications apply here as well. Device manufacturers must devise approaches that meet their rigorous security requirements, and each may choose a different approach. For example, depending on the lifetime of private keys and functionality when disconnected from the internet. So essentially, some of this is going to be up to the manufacturer. Second question they asked, what is to stop someone from buying a camera with content credentials, cracking it open, and dumping the memory, then decompiling it to find the encryption key? Or even simpler, if the CC can be embedded by a smartphone camera app, what's to stop someone from decompiling the app to find the key that they use? If they're making a cryptographic signature on a device without direct network access, like a camera, then the key must be stored somewhere on the device, right? Andy says, keys can be permanently stored or frequently rotated to minimize this concern. The C2PA specification also supports OCSP, the standard protocol for certificate revocation, so any compromised device can be handled appropriately. Third question. These are hard questions, by the way. That was intense. I would not have been able to answer that. Thank you, Andy, for at least providing something.
I already have blood coming out of my ears, which is bad because it's wrecking my Jabra 4.
I'm sorry, but these are important. Someone really asked these questions, and I thought it was important to address them. And Andy gave us his time, so we're going to listen.
That's true.
I'm assuming that if I have these questions, other PetaPixel readers and listeners probably are wondering the same thing. So I'd love it if you could communicate how Content Credential deals with key security in greater depth, either on the podcast or in an article. We're going to do that. I'm actually trying to schedule a time to talk with Andy about this in the coming weeks. I know it's somewhat technical thing to discuss, Yeah, no kidding. When writing for general audiences, but you think it would be an amazing resource if you can still distill the essence of why you can or can't trust content credentials into something suitable for the general audience. Andy answered this actually as well, and we'll get into more detail on it later. But we have modeled security threats just as one would any system potentially at risk from cybersecurity. Techniques like key rotation, long and short lifetime keys, OCSP, and hardware security in combination provide a level of robustness we think makes content credentials trustworthy and dependable. By the way, he also wants to add that these were created with security and privacy in mind. There's no requirement to provide information, allowing creators to control the amount of information attached to a piece of content. Additionally, content credentials rely on proven cryptographic methods to seal and protect information from being tampered with. Overall, content credentials are building trust and transparency into the system at the point of origin or point of capture. Content credentials provided the best approach to restoring confidence and trust in digital content. We are not trying to catch or punish every bad actor out there, Andy says. It's about recognizing the good actors and giving them tools to protect and verify the integrity of work. Sorry that took so long. I do think that was important.
It is important. Boy,
Okay.
though, do you remember when photography was simple and you just had to
Yes.
keep your negatives from getting wet or catching on fire? Those were the great days, man. That was the golden age right there.
Okay. You guys did touch on this, but I'm going to have both these questions go at you to end the show. These are the last two. I'm going to punt the rest of these to next week. But Daman1221 asks, what do you think will be the next major physical upgrade you think will appear in photo or video cameras and why? Recent example would be shutterless cameras. Personally, I'm hoping for built-in ND and some more FX3 or BHG1 style bodies. And related to this, let's listen to Philip on SpeakPipe.
Hey guys, so I was wondering, since every big manufacturer has gone mirrorless and even Panasonic can now provide a capable autofocusing system, what might be the next big argument for purchasing new gear? Thanks, and bye-bye.
Ooh, that was a veiled dig at Panasonic right there, hey?
Even Panasonic can provide a capable autofocusing system. I mean, when they can do it, I mean, the technology's there.
The next big physical change, hey? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, obviously, we're seeing it now with sensors. I think that would be the next big physical upgrade, which will then lead, I think, to more software-based upgrades. I think that's really going to be it. But he said physical. I don't know. Jordan wants the vibrating shutter, so hopefully that'll happen for him.
It's called the haptic feedback. I don't like
Built-in NDs would be awesome. It's just they take up physical space, which is already at a premium.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, the thing, I think it'll be related to the physical design of sensors, and I think it's been coming for a while, and we're finally, with global shutters, I think, kind of at the point where the sensor is not the issue. I would love to see something that reads out the sensor at a video frame rate, and then with the remaining time when it's not reading, also pops it with a shutter speed ideal for photo. Because the big problem right now, like people are saying, 120 frames per second, that's slow-mo video. But if you play that back, it's at a fast shutter speed. It's going to look janky as a video clip. Or if you capture it as a video clip, you're going to have slow shutter speeds for stills. I think we're at the point now where capture two images simultaneously, store them in separate containers. Here's your video clip from this moment. Here's your photo sequence from that same one.
Yeah.
That would
and again,
be
just to
very
clarify
cool.
for the listeners, at different shutter speeds.
At different
That's
shutter
the key
speeds,
thing. At
which would
different shutter
require the sensor reading out at two different sensitivities in between it as well.
Yeah.
So that your exposure doesn't go completely out to lunch. So I think that is something that we might see in the near future.
The other thing I think that's going to be pertinent is better processing power. I mean, that's always key, right? We're in a phase now where it's a race to make better technology that can read out faster, put out more data, and then have processing power and media storage that prevents as many bottlenecks as possible. And when you really are able to get that all in balance, that's where we're going to see some real big changes.
And for some reason, none of these camera companies want to have any help doing that. They all want to do it themselves. They all want to. Companies that have never been particularly great at designing processors are insisting on designing their own processors rather than working with a processor
want to keep their
specialist.
secrets.
I guess. But they can sign NDAs. Like you can make a company not disclose what they did for you. Intel and Qualcomm are right there.
Yeah, the new Snapdragon is so insanely powerful. Like, throw that in a camera, see what it opens up as a possibility for us.
Qualcomm has already said, yeah, we'd love to do that. They've literally told me that. Please, we'd love to do that. But no, they refuse to ask for help. And I think that is going to be until they crack the code of what companies who have been specializing in making processors have already done. They're gonna keep running into this wall. I mean, it's going to take them forever to reach the same level of
one day. I hope all
sophistication.
the manufacturers will just ditch their proprietary software and just give up on it. Like, collectively, they should all get together,
handshake deal.
Handshake and just throw it all into a bonfire at the same time, and then just be like, we're done with this.
And then all of a sudden
we'll
you can have a level or a histogram while shooting video with a Canon camera. Can you imagine such a world, Jaron?
Wow.
You probably can't.
I can't. No, it doesn't exist.
Your idealistic utopian dreams are the stuff of fantasy.
Oh man, sorry for the longer episode, folks. There's a lot to go through, and there are multiple questions that y'all asked in the comments. I did see them. They're there. There are multiple speak pipes. I know. I'm sorry. We will get to those starting next week during our Thanksgiving episode and the American Thanksgiving episode. And then,
Thank you.
Thank you.
And tell me how to fix my feet.
Yeah. Podiatrists, get in there. Jump in.
Yes.
Tell Chris what's wrong with his feet. I'm sure that you need more information than what was provided.
Hell, I don't care. Dentists can tell me some advice, or like physical therapist, yogis, anything. Just tell me.
Man.
Everybody.
Thanks everyone for listening again. We appreciate you tuning into the podcast. Thanks to OM System once again for sponsoring the episode, making it possible. And we'll catch you all next week.
I really think Chris is the Cameron Diaz, actually.
No.